What if your name, your job, and your entire identity were a lie, and everyone around you isn't on it? Welcome to Shutter Island, where the weather's rough, the staff is sketchy, and your brain? Yeah, it's about to get scrambled. Let's recap a movie that gaslights its main characters so hard, it might just do it to you too. It's 1954. U.S. Marshal Teddy Daniels and his new partner Chuck arrive at Ashecliffe, a hospital for the criminally insane, perched on a storm-ravaged island off Boston Harbor. Upon arrival, the marshals are greeted by tight-lipped guards and an electrified perimeter because, nothing says healing environment like enough voltage to deep-fry a cow. The head of security, McPherson, grumbles that the island's tension is thicker than the fog rolling in, and just as pleasant. Then he demands the marshal's hand over their firearms. Teddy bristles, probably already regretting the trip, but reluctantly complies, while also noticing that Chuck's gun had been improperly holstered in his waistband. Inside, McPherson describes the facility: Ward A for men, Ward B for women, and the ominous Ward C, housing the most dangerous inmates. Entry there requires special permission. Teddy and Chuck are here to find Rachel Solando, a patient who drowned her 3 kids. They meet the very professional and very shady head psychiatrist Dr. Cawley, who drops the bomb. Rachel vanished from a locked room without a trace, barefoot, in the middle of the night. Either she's a ninja, a ghost, or something way weirder is going on. The men search Rachel's cell and find a pair of shoes left behind. Teddy also finds a handwritten note that says, "The Law of 4, who is 67. Teddy and Chuck swing by the cafeteria, not for a sandwich, but to figure out how a barefoot child murderer escaped a locked room. Dr. Cawley is less than cooperative, playing gatekeeper with the records like they're nuclear codes. Teddy, already low on patience and high on trauma, starts to boil. Because nothing says "trust me" like refusing access to basic paperwork during a criminal investigation. They move on to the island's scenic coastal cliffs, the kind that scream death in every direction. Guard McPherson assures them there's nowhere for anyone to hide. Translation: if she jumped, she's crab food. Back inside, it's time to play good cop / less crazy cop with the orderlies. One of them, Glenn, looks like he's aged 10 years overnight. Under pressure, he admits the unthinkable. He left his post to use the bathroom. In a place filled with murderers, apparently the most dangerous urge is a full bladder. Teddy, hunting for anything that makes sense, asks if anything strange happened during group therapy. The staff mentioned that Rachel's primary doctor, Dr. Sheehan, the one person who could actually be useful, has conveniently left. On vacation, during a crisis. Classic move. Later, Cawley invites Teddy and Chuck to his private chamber for cigars. Which sounds chill, until you realize the room is lit like a villain's lair and Gustav Mahler is softly scoring your mental breakdown. Enter Dr. Jeremiah Naring, Cawley's equally cryptic sidekick, sipping sherry and giving off "I read Nietzsche in the bath" energy. He takes one look at Teddy and drops this gem. "You are a man of violence." Teddy, triggered harder than a fire alarm, flashes back to watching a Nazi soldier slowly bleed out in World War II. Then Naring asks Teddy if he believes in God. Spoiler, Teddy does not. But he does believe in telling German psychologists exactly where to stick their questions. Teddy mocks Naring's accent and manages to insult both his nationality and his face in a single sentence. A real multitasker. The room ices over. Once again, the doctors refuse to release the files Teddy needs. Teddy loses it and storms out. That night, Teddy studies Rachel's cryptic note again like it's going to sprout lips and explain itself. The Law of 4. Who is 67? It's given Da Vinci Code, but make it institutionalized. He tells Chuck that they're being lied to. Repeatedly, boldly, badly. And he's convinced now more than ever, Rachel didn't escape alone. Someone on the inside helped her. Which, in this place, could mean anyone. Doctor, orderly, or imaginary friend. We might have to mention here that Teddy's not just here on official business, though. He's got baggage, migraines, PTSD flashbacks from World War II, and dreams about his dead wife, Dolores, who cryptically tells him that although she herself is not around anymore, Rachel still is, and so is Andrew Letty's, the arsonist responsible for Dolores' death. Ghost wives never give straight answers. So yeah, he's working the case, but also maybe working through something. Teddy wakes up mid-tempest like he's starring in a horror-themed version of Survivor, Psych War Edition. Rather than curl up with a cup of tea and process his World War II trauma, he requests a lovely little morning activity, interviewing the violently insane. Dr. Cawley, puffing his chest like a man proud of his experimental ethics, agrees. He gives a TED Talk on how he prefers talking and pills over more retro options, like scrambling brains with ice picks, aka lobotomies. Teddy, ever the skeptic, looks like he'd trust a toaster in the bathtub more than this guy. Teddy and Chuck get to chatting with Mr. Breen, a man who seems like he could murder you and then knit you a sweater from your hair. Unfortunately, Mr. Breen is about as helpful as a wet match. No intel on this mysterious Letty's character. Then comes Mrs. Kearns, a woman who serves unhinged with a dash of charm. She spills the beans that Rachel believed she was still living her domestic life in the Berkshires, possibly baking imaginary muffins for invisible kids. When asked about Rachel's doctor, Dr. Sheehan, she perks up and declares he was handsome. Teddy asks if she knows Letty's. Kearns says no. Later, he tells Chuck she was definitely rehearsed. While exploring the jagged cliffs, Teddy explains to Chuck his obsession. Andrew Letty's was supposed to be at Ashecliffe. According to the state, he is here. But according to reality, poof, vanished like ethical oversight at a Cold War government lab. Then the storm goes full Shakespearean and the guys seek shelter in a creepy little shed that looks like it's hosted at least 3 cults and 1 demon. While there, Teddy gets real. He opens up about Dachau, a snowy, blood-soaked memory lane. He recalls marching past piles of corpses and executing surrendering Nazis. He calls it what it was, not war but murder, the kind that sticks to your bones and keeps you up at night, or makes you chase ghosts on island. Back on the conspiracy train, Teddy tells Chuck no one talks about Ashecliffe, which is always comforting when you're standing in it. He drops a spicy little nugget. The place is funded by WAC, the House Un-American Activities Committee. Yes, that WAC, famous for sniffing out commies and crushing dreams in Hollywood. Apparently now in the business of mental health grants. Totally not suspicious. He tells Chuck about a man named George Noyce, a socialist college kid who ended up in Ward C after taking part in a psych study. The experiment messed him up so bad, he nearly murdered his professor. After a short release, he killed 3 men in a bar fight and begged the judge for the death penalty, just so he wouldn't be sent back to Ashecliffe. Chuck started to think this whole mission smells fishy. What if Rachel's escape was staged? What if they're not just investigating, but being watched, toyed with, trapped? Before Teddy can spiral any deeper, Gar McPherson finds the men stranded in the shack and chauffeurs them back to the facility like nothing happened. Back at base, Teddy and Chuck crash a staff meeting mid-argument. Cawley and Naring are at odds. Naring wants the patients shackled during the storm, very humane, very 1943, while Cawley is worried about them dying. Teddy interrupts with what he thinks is a casual question. Hey, so about that note, who's patient number 67? Cawley, giving maximum "oh you silly boys" energy, says, there is no 67th patient. Then casually drops the next twist. Rachel has been found. In her cell, flanked by Dr. Cawley and Chuck, Teddy casually asks the so-called Rachel what she did yesterday. Rachel, fully tuned in to the 1950s domestic bliss channel, starts reminiscing about making eggs for her ghost husband and sending imaginary kids off to imaginary school. Things go south quickly when she hugs Teddy and calls him Jim, but when she realizes Teddy isn't her late husband, she flips from tender to terrifying in a snap. Back in Cawley's office, the doctor informs Teddy and Chuck that Rachel was discovered casually skipping stones near the shoreline, as if she hadn't just ghosted from a maximum security psych ward. Thunder cracks, drama intensifies, and Teddy gets hit with a migraine so bad it sends him straight into Cawley's armchair like a sack of wet potatoes. Cawley, always the gracious host, offers him pills and a cozy cot. Cue another dream sequence. He's back in Dachau, doing a depressing walk among corpse popsicles. One body in particular catches his eye, a frozen woman clinging to a frozen girl. The girl breaks the ice, figuratively, by whispering that Teddy should have saved them all. No pressure. The nightmare shifts, and suddenly Teddy's in Collie's office again. But now it's lit like a noir movie, and bam, there's a scorched up Letty's puffing a cigarette by the fire. Letty's hands Teddy a flask, offering some cryptic therapy in liquid form, then melts into Chuck, who warns that time's running out. Just as things can't get weirder, Rachel pops up, drenched in blood, with 3 dead kids laid out like a horrifying family portrait. She asks Teddy for help, but he mumbles something about getting in trouble, because when isn't mass child murder inconvenient? Teddy lifts one of the dead kids, a little girl, and murmurs an apology for not being Superman. Then he's at a lake again, where he lowers her into the water beside 2 other floating children. Rachel, clearly unbothered, calls the scene beautiful. Teddy, disturbed but emotionally exhausted, takes that in stride. Just when you think he's awake, bam, false alarm. Soaking wet Dolores enters stage. She whispers that Letty's is still lurking around, and, surprise, it's kill o'clock, as she strokes Teddy's hair like a psycho lullaby. He actually wakes up this time, to find Ashecliffe in chaos mode. Flooded generators, panicked orderlies, and a total power outage that's turned the whole place into a lunatic escape room. Teddy and Chuck stroll outside, and Chuck, ever the opportunist, suggests a stroll through the notorious Ward C. Because if you're going to risk being torn apart by psychos, might as well do it during a thunderstorm, right? Inside Ward C, a pale, naked, feral patient decides it's tag time. Teddy chases the guy only to get ambushed and dragged behind a cage wall, where the man starts ranting about hydrogen bomb physics. Teddy regains control and starts choking the guy, until Chuck intervenes with, "Hey, maybe don't kill the patient?" A warden comes just in time to scold them. He drags the human Wikipedia entry to the infirmary, with Chuck in tow, leaving Teddy to wander alone with nothing but a book of matches. As he explores the ward, whispers float from the cells, and one word cuts through the madness like a knife. Letty's. Teddy then finds, drumroll, George Noyce, former patient, current scar prophet. Noyce accuses Teddy of giving him his face full of horror movie scars and drops the bomb. Teddy's not investigating anything. He's stuck in a performance piece. According to Noyce, Teddy has been babysat by Chuck since day one, and surprise, he'd never even met him before the ferry ride. Teddy's baffled. Noyce gets teary-eyed, tells him he's lighthouse-bound for a fresh lobotomy, and whispers that the last person who called it a spa treatment hasn't blinked since 1947. Dolores then waltzes into Teddy's mind, again, urging him to bring up her locket, as if that's the secret password to end this fever dream. Noyce, not having any of it, begs Teddy to let Dolores go like she's Titanic-era Rose, and he's clinging to door debris. But Teddy won't drop her, literally or metaphorically. So Noyce just sighs, shrugs, and says, "Well, enjoy never leaving the island. Hope you like soggy rats and institutional coffee." Teddy stumbles out, just in time for Chuck to show up. Chuck says Collie and McPherson are raiding Ward C, so they better run into the woods. Chuck then mentions he found Letty's intake form. Teddy, laser-focused on only the creepiest landmarks possible, says, "Cool, I'll look later," and heads toward the lighthouse. They arrive at a cliff where the lighthouse looms. Chuck pleads with Teddy to go back. When Teddy asks where he's from, Chuck says Seattle, even though Teddy swears he said Portland. And just like that, Teddy's trust shatters. He tells Chuck to stay behind, and they separate. High tide blocks the lighthouse path, so Teddy scrambles back and finds Chuck has vanished. He spots what looks like Chuck's body on the rocks below and climbs down with the grace of a drunk mountain goat, nearly dying. At the water's edge, Teddy follows a trail of rats up into a cave. Inside, a knife-wielding, middle-aged woman greets him and tells him she is the real Rachel Solando. She says she used to be a psychiatrist at Ashecliffe until she found out about mind control experiments and got locked up herself. She warns Teddy he's next, that they're drugging him, that they'll use his trauma to make him seem crazy. Morning comes. Rachel, who's now completely shifted from conspiratorial therapist to survivalist raccoon, tells Teddy to hit the road before she gets turned into a ghost story too. Teddy, ever the romantic, says, "Let's run away together." Rachel, ever the realist, replies, "You have no friends," and vanishes. Dirty, bruised, and with paranoia levels hitting nuclear, Teddy hikes back to the road where a very unhelpful warden gives him a lift. Back at Ashecliffe, the scene is pure chaos. Patients being wrangled like rabid dogs. Collie shows up and drops more gaslighting. Some maniac attacked a patient in Ward C, who me, and chatted with Noyce, never heard of him. Collie offers Teddy a cigarette. He declines because, at this point, everything could be laced with ketamine. Collie keeps pressing Teddy about his partner, and Teddy finally throws up his hands and says, "What partner?" Teddy showers and spies on an orderly because subtlety is dead. He bumps into Dr. Naring, who's got a sedative syringe and a calm demeanor. Teddy pins him to the wall. Naring giggles like the Joker and says that trauma comes from the Greek word for wound, which also happens to be dream in German. Super comforting. Teddy jabs him with the syringe and runs like a man being chased by his own brain. He hotwires a car and grabs a cigarette. Dolores appears in the passenger's seat, all ghost wife realness, and tells him to head for the ferry. But Teddy, romantic to the bitter end, says he needs to save Chuck. Then he rigs the car to blow sky high. As he walks away, a little girl takes Ghost Dolores' hand. He swims across the bay, punches a guard, steals his rifle, and charges into the lighthouse, which, disappointingly, isn't full of mad scientists or glowing brains. It's just empty. At the top, there's one lonely wooden door. He storms in and finds Dr. Cawley sipping tea and casually dropping nuclear truth bombs. Teddy isn't Teddy. He's Andrew Letty's, the very man he's been hunting. A former U.S. Marshal who murdered his bipolar wife Dolores after she drowned their 3 children. Teddy Daniels and Andrew Letty's anagrams. Rachel Solando and Dolores Chanel, also anagrams. Basically, the entire cast is playing Scrabble with his trauma. Also, what about Chuck? There is no Chuck. He's Dr. Sheehan, Andrew's actual psychiatrist. The migraines? Medication withdrawal. The mystery? A massive role-play intervention. And the plot twist? It's you, buddy. So what was this entire investigation? A role-play experiment to snap Andrew out of his delusions, because traditional therapy didn't work, and this was their last-ditch effort to avoid lobotomizing him after he attacked another patient. Yes, you got it. George Noyce. Andrew's brain short-circuits. He faints like a Victorian woman who saw ankle. When Andrew wakes up, he is finally lucid. He remembers. He understands. He confesses. The doctors are cautiously hopeful. This is progress. But they've been here before. 9 months ago, he snapped out of it and then fell right back into his Teddy fantasy. So they give him a choice. Stay sane or get lobotomized. No pressure. Next day, Andrew's chilling with Sheehan on the hospital steps. Then he turns and says, "We got to get off this island, Chuck." Oh. Sheehan gives the signal. Lobotomy confirmed. But before Andrew goes, he asks, "Which would be worse, to live as a monster or to die as a good man?" Sheehan's like, "WTF, bro." Andrew walks off. Cue the scalpel. So did he relapse? Or did he fake it, choosing to be lobotomized because he couldn't live with the guilt? Roll credits. Existential crisis activated. That was Shutter Island, a film that messes with your head harder than the doctors mess with Andrew's. If your brain just did backflips, hit that like button, subscribe for more movie mind melts, and drop a comment. Did he lose his mind, or did he make peace with it? Until next time, stay off creepy islands, keep your identity intact, and maybe don't trust anyone named Chuck.